The rain falls in sheets, sharp and cold, drumming on the rough timbers of the makeshift camp. Mud clings to boots and skirts alike, sucking at each step. The air is thick with the metallic tang of blood from old wounds, the acrid smoke from fires lit to stave off the chill. She huddles beneath a threadbare blanket, arms drawn close to her chest, trying to remember warmth. Her ribs ache with hunger, her lips are cracked and dry. She whispers her name to herself, as if saying it aloud will keep her alive. Anna. Anna Muller. The forest around her is heavy with shadows, the skeletal trees bowing under the weight of water. Somewhere a dog barks, a shrill sound that cuts through the drizzle. She presses her hands to her ears, rocking slightly, trying to drown it out. Her stomach growls, a hollow sound that seems to echo in the damp air, but she forces herself to ignore it. Hunger is a companion, but fear is a tyrant. A flash of movement, boots splashing through mud, alerts her. She flinches. The figure is tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a measured calm that seems almost unreal. The American uniform is foreign and menacing, yet there is no rifle leveled at her, no barked orders. He pauses a few feet away, tilting his head, taking in her disheveled figure. His eyes, blue and startling in the grey drizzle, do not look away. There is recognition, perhaps pity in them. "You're cold," he says softly, not demanding, merely stating what is. His voice is smooth, low, strangely comforting against the roar of the storm. She does not answer. Words are heavy, almost impossible in this state of exhaustion. Her teeth chatter, and she shivers despite the thin fabric wrapped around her. Her arms are too weak to fold herself properly. She watches him, calculating, suspicious. He is the enemy, always the enemy, and yet. The man kneels slowly, boots squelching in the mud, and offers a hand. In it is a small tin can of something warm, a pale broth that smells faintly of herbs. Steam rises from it, curling into the foggy air. Hunger claws at her, but pride restrains her. Her fingers tremble as she considers the gift, weighing it against every lesson drilled into her since childhood. "You're mine now," he says quietly, almost a whisper, almost intimate, almost terrifying. Not in ownership, but in the certainty of protection. The words hang in the mist, strange and heavy, as if carrying the weight of promise and threat alike. She reaches for the tin, hands shaking, barely lifting it to her lips. The warmth of the liquid spreads slowly, a small rebellion against the chill that has seeped into her bones. She drinks, small sips at first, then greedily. Her stomach contracts in relief, and for the first time in days, maybe weeks, she feels a pulse of hope. Around them, the forest seems to hold its breath. Rain drops patter softly, the wind rustles the skeletal branches, but for this moment the world narrows to two figures, an American soldier and a German woman, both teetering on the fragile precipice between fear and trust. He watches her quietly, eyes scanning the perimeter, alert yet relaxed. He does not speak again immediately, letting the silence stretch, letting the sound of rain and mud fill the void. There is something human in the way he waits, something that feels almost sacred. Anna thinks of home, of broken tiles in her kitchen, of her mother's hands churning bread dough, of her father's voice cracking with frustration. She thinks of all the warnings, all the lies, all the propaganda that painted this man and his people as monsters. And yet here he is, not a monster, not even a soldier in action, just a human being offering warmth, sustenance, a moment of decency in the collapse of her world. She lets herself imagine what it would be like to walk beside him, to leave the mud, the hunger, the fear behind. But guilt claws at her, sharp and insistent. He is the enemy. I must not be grateful. I must not survive because of him. It is wrong. Her hand tightens around the tin. She closes her eyes, letting the warmth seep in, letting herself for one moment simply be alive. The soldier watches her, then reaches into his coat pocket and produces a small bar of soap, thick, white, heavy in the hand, faintly perfumed, almost absurdly luxurious in this desolation. He places it beside her, wordless. Anna's eyes widen, a luxury, a miracle. Her fingers brush the soap instinctively, marveling at the smoothness, the way it smells faintly of flowers, a scent she thought she would never encounter again. The greatest cruelty, it seems, is to be treated decently. And as the rain continues to fall, she allows herself to think, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, survival will not be the end of her story. The wagon jolts over rutted dirt roads, the wheels groaning under the weight of its cargo. Mud sprays upward in greasy arcs, clinging to the hem of her skirt, to the tips of her shoes, to the raw skin of her ankles. She huddles in a corner, knees pressed to her chest, watching the dim horizon shift under the overcast sky. The air is thick with the scent of wet hay and horse sweat, mingling with the tang of iron from blood long dried onto the wagon floor. Each jolt sends her stomach twisting, but she does not cry out. She cannot. Not here, not in front of them. Around her, the other prisoners sit in silence. Faces are drawn, eyes hollow, clothing ragged and streaked with grime. Some rock gently back and forth, murmuring prayers under their breath. Others stare fixedly at the walls, as if willing them to vanish. Every now and then, a boot scrapes against the wooden planks, and heads snap up, heartbeats spiking, only to relax when it's a guard passing by. She watches the soldiers with careful calculation, noting the casual brutality in their gestures, the way they swing their rifles, the way their boots leave dark impressions on the mud. Yet, for all the fear, there is a strange rhythm to the journey, a cadence that is almost hypnotic. The creak of wheels, the rattle of chains, the murmur of whispers, all combine into a perverse lullaby. Anna feels herself swaying with it, eyes half closed, imagining herself floating above the wagon, untouchable, invisible. Hunger gnaws relentlessly, but the warmth of the broth he had given her lingers like a faint, stubborn ember inside her chest. She clutches her diary against her chest, the thin leather cover rough and familiar beneath her palms. Inside, the pages are filled with cramped handwriting, confessions of fear, scraps of poetry, lists of names she cannot forget. Writing has become her tether, a fragile thread connecting her to sanity. She presses it to her forehead, inhaling the faint scent of ink and paper, and whispers to herself, "I will survive. I must survive. I cannot let them break me completely." The wagon slows at a shallow stream, the water bubbling over stones slick with moss. The horses hesitate, their breath steaming in the cold morning air. She imagines the stream as a mirror, reflecting not her face, but the face of the world she left behind. Burned villages, charred furniture, a sky blackened by smoke and despair. She thinks of the propaganda that filled her childhood, the relentless insistence that the Americans are monsters, cannibals, destroyers. And yet here she is, alive, untouched, watching a landscape that is both foreign and strangely indifferent. The soldiers move with mechanical precision, shouting orders, dragging bodies when they falter. Anna flinches at every shout, her stomach knotting in anticipation. She notices the minutiae, the glint of a knife blade, the snap of a belt, the cold snap of air against a bare arm. She writes it all down later, in careful, trembling script, because she knows that every detail is proof that she endured. Conversations are whispered, snippets of news stolen from mouths too tired to speak loudly. One woman murmurs about ration cards, another about a brother gone missing, a third about a town flattened by bombers. Their words are fragile threads connecting them, stories of loss and resilience woven into a tapestry of shared suffering. Anna listens, absorbing everything, storing it for herself. The world outside the wagon is collapsing, and yet inside this small, shuddering capsule there is a fragile, desperate intimacy. The first night falls while they are still moving. Fog seeps from the earth, curling around their boots through the spokes of the wagon wheels. She tries to sleep but cannot. Hunger gnaws, the cold bites, and every sound seems magnified. The whip of a branch, the creak of the wagon, the murmur of voices. She dreams of home, of her mother's kitchen, of warm bread rising in the oven, of laughter that now seems a cruel memory. She wakes with tears streaking her streaked face, hands clutching at the thin blanket, and finds herself trembling uncontrollably. The soldier from before rides alongside the wagon for a brief stretch, silhouette dark against the pale fog. He does not speak, merely watches, and she feels the strange, impossible comfort of his presence. He is human, he is not what I was told, he is something else entirely. The thought terrifies her almost as much as it comforts her. How can kindness exist in this world? By the time they arrive at the holding camp, the landscape has shifted. The forest thins into open fields, mud giving way to gravel paths, and the sky is a paler, colder gray. Smoke rises in thin columns from distant chimneys, an alien but somehow reassuring sign of civilization. She notices birds circling overhead, their cries sharp, piercing, almost mocking in their freedom. And she realizes with a shock that she has been holding her breath all day. She exhales slowly, feeling the tension drain from her shoulders, and for the first time in days imagines a place where she might be safe. She is not yet free, not by far, but for the first time a tiny ember of possibility sparks in her chest. The journey has been merciless, and yet it has carried her here, closer to warmth, to sustenance, to life. And somewhere in the fog and mud and fear, she whispers to herself, I am still here, I am still breathing. And that is everything. The gates loom like a steel maw, yawning wide to swallow the ragged column of prisoners. Beyond, the camp stretches in harsh geometries, rows of barracks glinting under a pale, indifferent sun. Fences topped with barbed wire glint like silver threads, menacing yet sterile. The air smells faintly of disinfectant and smoke, an odd combination that makes her stomach twist. Mud has been scrubbed away from this space, yet the orderliness of it unsettles her more than the chaos of the journey ever could. Anna steps from the wagon, legs stiff, knees weak, her shoes squelching in the gravel. The soldier who had given her warmth before stands nearby, expression neutral, but eyes soft as they follow her movements. She notices small gestures, the way he adjusts a strap on a guard's belt, the subtle tilt of his head as he watches the lines of prisoners move in formation. There is no malice in him here, only a strange, commanding calm that fills the space like an invisible shield. She can barely comprehend the scale of it. There are dozens, hundreds of prisoners, each one pale, gaunt, hollow-eyed, yet moving with a quiet resilience. Some stumble, some whisper in terrified clusters, some cry silently. The first real shock hits her not in brutality, not in the threat of violence, but in the quiet, meticulous order of it all. No shouting, no immediate cruelty. The guards move with efficient precision, not anger. She feels almost absurdly, childishly relieved, and the relief is startling, alien. Inside the barracks, the first detail that sears itself into her memory is the smell. Warm bread baking in a nearby kitchen, mingling with the clean tang of laundry, the faint medicinal scent of disinfectant. She inhales sharply, dizzy with disbelief. Bread, clean sheets, soap, little luxuries, almost obscene in their abundance, staring her in the face after weeks of starvation, mud, and fear. Her fingers twitch. She wants to touch everything, to confirm it is real. A thin blank. It is thrust into her hands by a nurse who smiles faintly, speaking softly in broken German. Sleep, she says, motioning to a neatly made cot. The sheet is crisp, the mattress firm but yielding. Anna's heart beats so fast she fears it will shatter her chest. She collapses onto the bed, clutching the blanket, trembling uncontrollably. Tears roll down her cheeks, unbidden and hot, the first she has allowed herself in days. Her diary finds its way into her lap. She writes with a trembling hand, I thought I would die in mud, cold and fear, but here is bread, here is warmth. The greatest cruelty, perhaps, is not knowing whether to rejoice or despair. The words are jagged, scraped across the page, and she almost smears them in her own tears. A small tray of food appears beside her. Porridge, thick and warm, dotted with fruit she does not recognize, sweet enough to make her stomach rebel in disbelief. Each bite is surreal. The warmth spreads through her, filling empty spaces in her chest she had thought dead. She eats slowly, savoring each mouthful, feeling shame alongside relief. How can I feel gratitude for this? She wonders, how dare I be nourished while others starve? Her gaze wanders to the other prisoners. They are cautious, skeptical, even suspicious. Many do not touch the food. Many look around as if expecting the nightmare to return, as if any moment the guards will decide this kindness was a trap. Anna recognizes herself in them, recognizes the same instinctual distrust that has kept her alive. She watches, silently learning, absorbing the rhythm of this strange new reality. Later, she is led to the showers. The water is hot, almost painfully so, cascading down her shoulders and washing away weeks of grime and fear. She trembles under the stream, not from cold but from disbelief. Soap bubbles, thick and fragrant, cling to her skin. She closes her eyes, letting herself feel something she almost forgot existed. Clean, humanity, dignity. The sensation is electric, almost painful in its novelty. Clothing follows, sturdy, clean, freshly laundered. It hangs differently on her frame, not out of pride, but because she has grown accustomed to rags, to the scratch of threadbare fabric against raw skin. She examines herself in a small mirror, eyes wide. I am not just alive, I am visible, I am cared for. The realization terrifies her as much as it comforts. The first shock is not cruelty. It is the opposite, abundance, dignity, civility. She sits on the edge of her cot, breathing shallowly, digesting the impossible truth. Outside, the camp is quiet, methodical. Guards patrol with a calm precision that contrasts sharply with the chaos of her memories. A young boy in a tattered uniform passes, head down, but the glimmer of hope in his eyes mirrors her own. And through it all, the soldier who had saved her remains nearby, wordless yet present, a steady anchor in a sea of confusion. She notices the small, human gestures again, the way he nods politely at a guard, the way he adjusts a coat for warmth, the way he moves through the camp with a quiet command that does not intimidate but protects. She feels her body relax ever so slightly, the first real relief of the journey settling into her bones. Later, she will write in her diary, I came expecting horror. Instead, I found bread, warmth, and kindness. Perhaps the greatest shock of all is that one can survive without hatred, that one can endure without cruelty, that one can breathe without trembling. And in the stillness of that first night, as she curls under the crisp blanket, she whispers to herself, this is not the end. This is something else, something terrifyingly, painfully human. The mornings come with sunlight spilling across the barracks, gold and indifferent, brushing the thin lines of wood and metal. Anna wakes before the others, limbs stiff, stomach full in a way that feels almost indecent. The blank, it smells faintly of detergent and something she cannot name. Comfort, perhaps, or civility, and she inhales deeply, letting the fragrance anchor her in a reality she is only beginning to accept. Outside, the air is sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and baked bread from the kitchen. She marvels at the contrast, the warmth, the food, the regularity, against the chaos she left behind in Germany. Breakfast is a quiet, orderly affair. Bowls of oatmeal, honey, and fresh milk are placed before her. The porridge is thick, sweet, and steaming, and the taste is almost obscene after weeks of famine. She hesitates, spoon hovering, aware of the hunger clawing at her body and the lingering guilt that sits heavier than the food in her stomach. Around her, other prisoners eat cautiously, taking small bites, eyes darting toward the guards. For some, the shock of abundance is intoxicating, for others, unbearable proof of what they lost, what their country lost. Anna studies the soldiers and caretakers as they move among the prisoners. There is an unspoken decency to them, a rhythm of service and attention that feels almost alien. They hand out clothes, offer blankets, check wounds with soft words rather than harsh commands. One young nurse bends to adjust a thin cot for an elderly man, whispering in German, "It's all right. You are safe now." Anna watches, mesmerized. The smallest gestures carry enormous weight. The adjustment of a blanket, the tilt of a head, the soft tone of reassurance. She writes it down later. The greatest cruelty, it seems, is to be treated decently. She ventures outside for the first time, drawn by the sound of distant laughter and the rhythm of work in the compound. The sun is warm, the sky pale blue, and the camp stretches like a carefully arranged miniature city. Vegetable gardens thrive in neat rows, their leaves glistening with dew. Chickens scratch at the dirt, ducks paddle in shallow pools. The sight is almost painful, a living proof of order and abundance where there should only be ruin. Her stomach twists again, not from hunger, but from the absurdity of the world she has entered. Letters arrive sporadically, thin sheets of paper crumpled and fragile. She hesitates to open them, knowing the words could either shatter or sustain her. When she reads them, the contrast is immediate and cruel. News from home tells of devastation, shortages, ruined towns, grief upon grief. Her hands tremble, the ink blurring through tears. She folds the letters carefully, hiding them under her pillow, the stark reality pressing against the warmth and abundance around her. Gratitude and guilt wrestle in her chest. She cannot reconcile the two. Meals continue with quiet repetition, each one a revelation. Bread crusts crack under fingers, butter melts luxuriously, jam is sweet in a way that feels almost sinful. She notices the smallest details, the way silverware gleams, the way bowls are polished, the gentle clink of spoons against porcelain. She savors each bite with disbelief, watching the others react with equal parts awe and suspicion. For the first time in her life, she does not think of food as survival only. She allows herself to taste, to enjoy, to exist without immediate fear. Work in the camp is orderly, purposeful. Prisoners are given small tasks: gardening, cleaning, folding laundry, tasks that are exhausting but dignified. For Anna, it is a revelation to touch clean soil, to wash a sheet without fear of punishment, to sweep floors knowing it will remain clean. Every act is infused with a sense of normalcy that is almost intolerable. Her diary becomes a lifeline, pages filled with trembling accounts. I did not know that simple acts could feel like miracles. I did not know that I could wake up without fear every day, that I could eat without guilt, that I could touch clean water and not flinch. In the evenings, she watches the sunset paint the sky in bruised oranges and purples. Shadows stretch long across the camp, the barbed wire a dark lattice against fading light. She sits on a cot outside the barracks, listening to the low murmur of voices, the faint laughter of children, the soft steps of soldiers moving in quiet efficiency. The world feels both impossibly wide and intimately contained, a strange paradox that unsettles her as much as it comforts. Her hands tremble as she writes again, I am caught between two worlds. One is ruins, smoke, hunger, and lies. The other is bread, warmth, dignity, and kindness. I cannot belong fully to either, and yet I am here, and I am alive. And in the stillness of these daily revelations, she begins to sense a shift within herself. Gratitude mingles with shame, hope with disbelief, fear with fascination. Every meal, every clean sheet, every kind word erodes the walls of propaganda she grew up with. She begins to see the enemy not as a monster, but as human. Vulnerable, flawed, capable of care, and this realization is terrifying. In quiet moments, she whispers to herself, what does it mean to survive when the world has promised only despair? What does it mean to be cared for by the enemy? The questions hang in the air, unanswerable yet persistent, as she sinks into the strange, painful comfort of living in a world that defies expectation. The days blur into a rhythm she cannot escape: wake, eat, work, sleep. Yet the monotony is deceptive, for within it lies a quiet, relentless war, the war inside her own mind. Every act of kindness, every tray of food, every warm blanket gnaws at the foundation of everything she had been taught. She had grown up hearing that Americans were monsters, destroyers, soulless enemies, and now she sees them not only as human but as compassionate, disciplined, and capable of care. The revelation is exquisite and unbearable at once. Letters from home arrive with increasing regularity. She hesitates before opening them, trembling as though the paper itself might contain poison. Each one is a brutal contrast. Tales of bombed cities, lost friends, destroyed lives, whispered fears, and prayers scrawled in shaky script. The world she left behind is crumbling, yet here she is, nourished, warm, and protected. Each sentence twists like a knife in her chest. Gratitude collides violently with guilt, leaving her gasping for moral balance. She writes in her diary that night, words jagged and raw. How can I enjoy bread when mothers at home cry for their children? How can I sleep in warmth while the earth is blackened by bombs? The enemy feeds me, shelters me, and yet my heart is full of shame. The ink smears across the page as her fingers shake. She pauses, staring at the words, realizing that the act of writing is the only place where she can admit the contradictions without fear of judgment. The psychological strain is subtle, insidious. At first, it is curiosity. Why are they treated with such decency? Why is cruelty absent where it was expected? She studies the soldiers, the caretakers, the nurses, looking for the hidden threat, the moment when the illusion will shatter. But no threat comes. The more she observes, the more her trust begins to grow, each kind gesture eroding the carefully constructed walls of propaganda. Conversations with other prisoners deepen her inner turmoil. Whispers in the night reveal doubts, confessions, and shared fears. One woman admits, trembling, "I think they are better than we were told. I cannot believe it." Anna nods silently, understanding the feeling all too well. It is dangerous, this acknowledgement, yet irresistibly human. The lines between enemy and savior blur, leaving her disoriented, yet more alive than she has been in weeks. In her solitude, Anna begins to confront her own identity. She had been a daughter, a sister, a German girl bound by loyalty to a nation, raised on propaganda, steeped in fear. Now, stripped of hunger and cruelty, her allegiance feels hollow. She wonders if survival requires a re-evaluation of everything she believed. Who is she if her enemy treats her with humanity? Can gratitude exist alongside guilt? And if it can, does it redefine who she is? Even the soldier who saved her embodies this paradox. He is no longer a figure of terror, but a presence that unsettles her in ways words cannot capture. His gaze is steady, not questioning, not commanding, simply watching, waiting. The earlier words, "You're mine now," echo in her mind, not possession, she realizes, but protection, responsibility, a promise. And that promise carries a weight far heavier than any physical threat she has known. Night brings dreams, restless and fragmented. She wanders bombed streets she remembers, then suddenly finds herself in sunlit kitchens, hands full of bread. Voices alternate between cries of grief and laughter of children she cannot identify. Each dream leaves her gasping awake, heart racing, unable to determine which world is reality. She writes in her diary, "Dreams no longer distinguish between horror and hope. They are one long, twisted reflection of my life. I am caught between what I knew and what I am learning to know. The erosion of propaganda becomes painful. She sees letters from home, sees ration lines, sees the destruction and despair, yet the camp offers the opposite: abundance, civility, care. The tension is unbearable. She asks herself in whispers, was everything I believed a lie? Was my loyalty misplaced? Am I complicit in believing what was convenient for my survival? Every thought carries both relief and shame, a constant oscillation between trust and disbelief. The psychological impact deepens when she glimpses America itself, not in person, but through carefully curated letters, pamphlets, and conversations. Images of cities untouched by bombs, of families living in abundance, of clean streets and smiling children, confront the reality of her world. She feels a strange sense of displacement, as though she no longer belongs to her home, and yet cannot fully belong here. Gratitude fights with the instinct to flee back to familiar ruins. She begins to understand, with a slow, suffocating clarity, that survival is not enough. Humanity, kindness, and decency demand reckoning. To accept them is to confront shame, to question loyalty, to redefine self. and the realization is both liberating and terrifying. She writes, "Perhaps survival is not the end. Perhaps understanding is survival. Perhaps living without hatred is the greatest victory and the greatest challenge. By the end of this week, Anna is no longer the same girl who first stepped into the camp. Hunger no longer dictates her existence. Fear no longer dominates her waking hours. She has begun the slow, wrenching process of seeing the world and herself with unflinching clarity. And in that quiet, invisible transformation, she confronts the profound truth. Humanity exists even in the enemy, and kindness can break walls built by years of lies." The morning sun spills gold across the camp, cutting through the last remnants of fog like a quiet promise. Anna rises slowly, muscles stiff but alive, her body still learning to accept warmth and abundance as normal. Today, she has been told, marks the beginning of departure. The return to Germany, to the ruins she had fled, to the fragments of life left behind. The announcement brings no joy, only a strange, hollow tension. She has survived, but the question of who she has become lingers, heavier than any pack on her back. She walks the familiar paths of the camp one last time, noting the gardens, the neatly stacked supplies, the children playing in sunlit corners. Each detail burns into her memory, the aroma of baking bread, the clean gleam of utensils, the faint scent of soap lingering in the air. The soldier who had first saved her watches from a distance, silent, unwavering, a sentinel in the shifting light. She longs to speak, to thank, to confess, but words feel inadequate. The enormity of survival, of humanity extended across the chasm of war, cannot be captured by language. At breakfast, she eats slowly, savoring the final tastes of warmth and nourishment. She notices the other prisoners exchanging glances, small, unspoken acknowledgments of shared transformation. They are not the same people who arrived here, gaunt and hollow-eyed. Something inside each has shifted irrevocably. Gratitude fights with guilt, relief with disbelief. But beneath it all is the quiet, undeniable recognition that life, even amid war, is capable of kindness. Her diary is clutched tightly to her chest, pages full of trembling reflections, ink smeared by tears and hands that could barely hold the pen. She reads through them one last time, absorbing her own evolution, from fear to survival, from suspicion to trust, from helplessness to small, powerful agency. She writes a final entry before leaving. "I have known hunger, despair, and fear. I have also known bread, warmth, and decency. I am neither wholly German nor wholly changed, but I am alive, and alive in a way I never imagined possible." The soldiers line up the wagons for departure. The horses shift uneasily in the cold morning, the wheels creaking over gravel paths. Anna climbs into the vehicle slowly, every movement deliberate, as though careful attention might preserve the fragile thread of memory she has woven here. She looks around at the camp, at the orderly rows, at the caretakers who have treated her with impossible kindness, and wonders if she will ever see it again, and does it even matter if I do? She asks herself silently. The memory is enough, and the lesson is eternal. The soldier who saved her approaches, finally speaking. His voice is low, steady, carrying a weight of certainty that startles her. "You'll be all right," he says simply. There is no flourish, no bravado, only the quiet truth of his presence. He hands her a small bar of soap, the same thick, white soap she had held in disbelief weeks ago. "For the journey," he adds, eyes meeting hers, unflinching. She nods, tears prickling her eyes, words failing her once again. She understands that the gesture is not grand, not heroic, but profoundly human. It is protection, care, and trust distilled into a simple, tangible object. The wagon jolts forward, wheels grinding gravel, the camp shrinking behind her like a dream fading at dawn. She presses the soap to her chest, remembering the first warmth, the first broth, the first moment she allowed herself to hope. She thinks of the soldier, silent and steadfast, and feels a pang of longing, not romantic, not possessive, but a deep recognition of the human bond that transcends fear, nationality, and war. He believed in humanity when I could not, she writes in her mind. And that belief has carried me here. Fields stretch wide, sun glinting off distant streams, and for a moment she allows herself to breathe without suspicion. The air smells of earth and grass, a reminder that life continues, indifferent to destruction, indifferent to war. She watches the other prisoners, noting their small gestures of connection, the quiet acknowledgments, the tentative smiles. Each carries the weight of survival and revelation, a testament to resilience forged not in hatred, but in humanity. Her thoughts drift inevitably to home. She does not know what awaits her, the ruin, grief, absence. But she knows she is changed. She is no longer a prisoner of fear, nor entirely of her homeland's ideology. The experience has carved a new identity, fragile yet undeniable. She writes silently in her mind, I have seen the enemy as human. I have been cared for, fed, protected. I carry this knowledge as both a shield and a burden. As the sun climbs higher, illuminating fields, rivers, and the distant scars of war, Anna whispers a final reflection, half to herself, half to the memory of the soldier who saved her. The world is capable of cruelty, yes, but it is also capable of unimaginable kindness, and perhaps in the quiet spaces between, that kindness is the true measure of humanity. The wagon rolls onward, gravel crunching beneath its wheels, carrying her toward an uncertain future. Yet, for the first time, she does not fear it entirely. She carries with her the quiet proof that survival is not merely a physical act, but a moral one, a conscious choice to accept both the harsh and the tender realities of life. And in that choice lies her transformation, indelible and haunting. She has been touched by humanity in the unlikeliest of places, and she will never forget it.